Rom, thank you for being here. Super excited to jump into all this stuff. We've got a lot of ground to cover. Let's hit it.
Let's get into it. So tell us your personal story. You're from Austin. Then you went to NYU. Why don't you pick it up from there?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Austin. My parents still live about 30, 40 minutes away. My dad's a computer engineer, runs a software company. So I've been around computers my whole life. Started building computers and programming when I was roughly 11 or so. Was never an amazing programmer, but I was very intrigued. When it came time to go to college, went to NYU because I was excited about going to New York, being in the big city, learning about business. Also, I thought that programmers were losers and that
Except
finance
you were
people
programming and building computers on the side.
Well, I realized I was like, no, that's for losers. I'm going to go to NYU and become a business guy.
Manage the engineers, the Steve Jobs model.
No, I was too cool for that. I was ready to just go work on Wall Street. I thought Wall Street was cool.
Oh, I see. Fascinating. Okay.
Over the course of a couple years in college, came to realize that I had no interest in working in finance, and that my passion was in fact technology, and that I should pursue my passion. I also met Tushar at NYU. We were classmates at NYU, and we both became very close, bonding over our shared interests kind of at the intersection of finance and technology. Was in college 2008 to 2012, and so this was the rise of the App Store, the rise of the iPhone. Tushar and I were both absolutely mega Apple bulls. I continue to be, I'd say, a lightweight Apple fanboy to this day, but we were just outrageously bullish to the iPhone. And I remember every for probably 3 years or so, every Apple earnings call, they blew it out of the water.
Right.
And I remember it was so obvious to us. I was like, this is the greatest trade in history. And then I thought all of investing would be that easy. And it turns out it's actually not that easy.
And Apple outperformed Bitcoin, actually. I will circle back to Apple, too. I've also been an Apple bull, but go ahead.
So anyways, did NYU. After college, I decided not to go down the Wall Street career track. Came back to Austin. Started working for my dad. My dad builds software for hospitals, electronic medical record systems.
Which firm or company is that?
The company's called VersaSuite.
Okay.
They cater primarily to rural hospitals. So the ones in big cities typically are run by Epic and Cerner, are the two big players there.
Exactly, yep.
VersaSuite caters to smaller hospitals. So learned a lot about healthcare operations, how to design enterprise software systems, databases, obviously enterprise sales cycles, all that complexity. And then kind of grew, wanted to do my own thing. I have what I like to call shiny new object syndrome. And so
it's called ADHD.
Right.
Adderall is in shortage apparently nationally.
Yeah, a lot of people have a similar syndrome. And Google announced Google Glass in 2013, and I got very excited about the shiny new object. And it was fairly obvious that there would be uses in healthcare. It was actually not particularly obvious what the consumer use cases
for surgery
were.
Use cases.
Paramedics, surgeons, nurses. I mean, any job where your hands are tied up, it's fairly intuitive.
Yep.
And so I was like, I know healthcare, I know operational hospital workflows, like Google Glass, like it was super obvious for me.
Very cool.
So started my first company in May of 2013 called Pristine. Pristine built software. We started off focused on surgeons. We later dealt with some other kind of functions as well in healthcare workflows. Raised some venture money, got to about 25-ish people, maybe 22, a few million in revenue. And then Google.
How much in revenue?
A few million in
revenue. That's you had product market fit.
Yeah, you know,
You had traction.
We had some traction, certainly. We had some hospitals using it. And then after, I think, 18 months or thereabouts, Google killed Google Glass.
Right.
Well, correction, they killed the consumer program. And they actually were like, no, there's an enterprise program still. But the perception was that it was dead.
So Apple rug pulled you.
Google.
Sorry,
me.
Google.
Google
Correct. Google Glass, yes.
Yes, Google rugged me. And, you know, after that, I pivoted the company. We tried some other stuff in insurance, some other places. None of it really worked. Ultimately, the business was kind of acquired for IP and for talent, and no one really made any money.
Sure.
I, wanted to figure out what I was going to do next. I spent an 18-month period between Pristine and Multicoin. This was a very long period of time. After 6 months, my parents started to be like, hey, what are you doing with yourself? I told everyone 3 months, and once you get to 6, people start asking questions. And I was trying to find what I wanted to do. One thing I knew about myself, and I actually have come to appreciate this fact even more as a venture guy, is I am very bad at coming up with ideas, but I'm very good at looking at an idea in front of me and tweaking it and iterating on it and having some sort of Socratic dialogue about a system. And so knowing that about myself and looking for startup ideas, I went to AngelList, and I don't think they have this anymore, but at the time, if you went to, this is early 2016, they'd have at the top, little tabs, and it would be fintech and cybersecurity
Right.
and blockchain and biotech and, whatever like the obvious kind of major categories of startups were. And so what I made a rule for myself, which was every day I'd pick one of those tabs and I'd scroll through 100 startups per day and look at them. And some of them I'd spend 8 seconds on because I was just like,
Quick reject.
No knowledge, no interest,
Right.
whatever. And some of them I'd spend 2 hours on, just like digging around and make some notes. And so the goal of doing that was, to spend a few weeks just to accumulate, okay, here's my 10 or 15 or 20 more defined interest areas,
Right.
and then continue the iterative process of.
You triaged and identified where to focus.
Correct. And so went through that process. I believe it was the third day of doing that I picked blockchain.
As a category.
It was one of the tabs on
I
the
see.
AngelList. Yeah, it was one of the tabs there. And started going through the startups. And of the 100 that were there, most of them were like BitPay and like Bitcoin payments kind of things. And I would say probably of the 100 I went through that day, I'm going to guess like 7 to 10 of them were doing something on top of Ethereum. I did not know what Ethereum was. But after the third or fourth time I saw Ethereum, I was like, okay, like make a note, like go look at this thing. Started looking at Ethereum by the end of the day and started to become pretty intrigued. I was pretty fortunate that I had spent just enough time playing with Stripe's APIs. Again, this is February, March 2016, that I was actually pretty underwhelmed. Stripe, even back then, was a fairly hyped up company, and I didn't fully appreciate why. And I went to the website and I was like, okay, it's like a simple to use API for a credit card, which did not strike me as particularly revolutionary.
Embedded
I guess
finance.
in 2009 that was revolutionary to be fair to the Stripe guys. But as of 2016, I was like, okay, whatever. And then I started fiddling around with Ethereum. And although Ethereum was 100 times harder to use for Stripe to just do basic payment acceptance, it was infinitely more flexible. And the immediate thing I understood at the time was basically what is now I would call permissionless innovation or permissionless finance. I didn't have that terminology certainly in my mind at that moment, and I don't think I appreciated the extent of that term. But kind of the light bulb turned on.
So composability, Kyle was born in this moment.
I think this is well before composability, Kyle. I don't think I could have foreseen different kinds of contracts and having a token standard that can connect all of them. I think that's still several years away. But the idea that, I can just write a function for some sort of finance and I can throw it on here and it will work, and I don't need to ask for regulator or deal with money transmission or any of that nonsense. And that light bulb turned on. And from there started to, made a note of Ethereum, started to, I went through another 10 or 15 days of picking more startups, more companies, and making my little list. I ended up coming back to Ethereum kind of at the end of that process, digging more into it. Ended up not loving anything else of the other 15 or 20 names I kind of narrowed in on, and started to dig more into Ethereum. We're now coming in to call it April or May of 2016, excuse me. And I started to really like the light bulb. I was like getting kind of the crypto pill at this time. Started getting more and more into it. Started investing a little bit in Ethereum. The DAO hard fork happened. I thought Ethereum was dead for sure. It became pretty apparent within a couple of weeks that it was going to survive. And once it survived that moment, I was like, all right, like this is it. I'm all in. Zcash ends up launching a month or two later. Augur launches, actually I think even before this time. And I could see a bunch of startups were now building on Ethereum. And I was kind of like, at that point, all in. So, over the back half of 16 and first part of 17, I was playing with other startup ideas. I had no particular interest in building a startup on Ethereum, or had
Because
nothing.
you had gone through that experience, and it's a slog, and it's hard and painful.
Well, I thought I wanted to do something that I didn't fully appreciate. I didn't have anything I loved to do, but the investing part was very fun, and was enjoying it. And by spring of 2017, I had 100% of my net worth was invested in crypto, and I was spending 40, 50 hours a week reading about crypto online. And I I remember the day. It was the Gnosis ICO. This is roughly, I think, May 12th, 2017. And they raised $12.5 million at a $300 million valuation in 2 or 3 blocks on Ethereum. So it was like 20 or 30 seconds. And I remember I called Tushar and I was like, and we'd been kind of falling down the crypto rabbit hole together. He had a job, I did not. So I was able to spend more time on it at the time. And I was like, hey man, like I think we need to go do something. Like this, I was like, this is crazy. We got to do something. And he was like, yeah, we got to do it. So we made the decision kind of more or less that day to started creating LLCs, and then hired some lawyers to figure out how to create LPs, which we didn't know much about how to create an LP. Started raising money from friends and family over the summer. We launched our what is now our hedge fund on October 1st of 2017. And we have since added a few venture funds and SPVs as well. So we're really scrappy, had no idea what we were doing, but I think the fund launched with, I want to say $2.5 million, thereabouts.
That was a liquid fund.
That was our liquid fund, was our first vehicle. And that vehicle runs today. That vehicle will turn 6 years old here in a couple weeks.
So a couple observations. One is son of an engineer, building at a young age. So you had motherboards, graphics cards, you were buying components, putting that together.
Yep.
You started a business, managed people, generated revenue. I think the role of mentoring, you referenced your father a few times too, and he clearly played an important role, as did mine as well. So I find that interesting. Then at NYU, what did you major in NYU?
Finance.
Finance. Okay. Then you said, hey, I'm more interested in technology, and you see how these two items come together. You looked at Stripe, embedded finance, and you realized there's a better way to do this. And so now Multicoin is launched, and it was branded Multicoin at the time too.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. And now you had a thesis around EOS at the time, and that didn't work out so much, but then you discovered Solana.
The order of operations there is not
Sure.
quite that straightforward. So, I mean, Ethereum is what got me into crypto. I had no interest in Bitcoin. I have far less interest in Bitcoin now than I ever have, and I'm the ultimate Bitcoin bear. So never had any interest. I remember, November of 2017 was DevCon 3. It was in Cancun. And obviously this is peak of the bull market of that bull, ETH is $1,000, $1,200, whatever it is. And the energy in Cancun among all the developers is electric. Vitalik gives his keynote. Everyone was expecting him to have a keynote on the future of sharding and the Ethereum roadmap and what it was all going to be. There was a lot of discourse at the time around sharding and plasma for scaling Ethereum. It was very well known that Ethereum needed to scale. And Vitalik's keynote covered none of the above. It was just like a retrospective of like the history of Ethereum up until that point and some other like philosophical stuff about public goods and whatever else. And I remember I left the keynote and I was just like, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, I had been following this for 18 months now. Ethereum was roughly 1 year old when I got into it. So Ethereum is now 2.5 years old. And, like Ethereum is the darling of 2017. All eyes are on, Vitalik. And we're at the developer conference. And everyone is like, what's the scaling plan? Like that's the question everyone wants to know. And literally no answer at all. And I remember just being like really disappointed and frustrated. And I was like, I quit my job. I'm all in on this crypto thing. Ethereum was my big thing. I like, what's happening here? And that's the first time when I started to say, okay, I need to go look elsewhere. At the time, the only other thing that really had any credibility at all was EOS. And I was actually pretty skeptical of EOS for a while. But one of our analysts actually was a big EOS fan. And so it started digging into EOS and came to just appreciate the differences in the trade-offs they were making, both ideologically as well as technologically, and came to like it quite a bit. And credit to the EOS team, they shipped in May or I think it was June 2nd, 2018. And we got pretty excited, got involved. There was a few fundamental technology decisions that they made that ultimately just ended up being wrong around WASM and around their token rent model for capacity in the system. And so it ended up failing for those reasons. To be fair, a bunch of people told us ahead of time, hey, these technical reasons will cause the system to fail. And our view was, hey, they'll iterate and work through those. And we were just dead wrong on that. And that kind of became apparent by the end of 2018 or early 2019. Meanwhile, Solana is being founded in early 2018, and we didn't have a strong view that like, well, EOS is correct and nothing else can be. We spent at this time, Definity is getting ready to getting founded, Near is getting founded, Algorand is getting founded, Solana is getting founded, Thunder. I mean, I don't remember. There are Tezos. There's a whole bunch of things coming together in the first half of 2018. EOS hasn't even launched yet, and so we spend I spend a huge amount of energy with all of those teams, digging into their respective systems, understanding the trade-offs,